Gamarjebat. Hi. Welcome to our second episode of the Liberland in Georgia podcast. I will dedicate this episode to the business perspective of Georgia, of the country. Why? Because the business in Georgia is highly on rise. Many people are interested in it, and so I would love you not to miss out anything. That's also why I dedicate this episode to the taxation perspective on how it works in Georgia. It's also why I invited Ilia Kekutia, who's the tax expert in Georgia and dedicated his life to this discipline. And first, I would love not to miss out the fact that we are shooting in the space of Franklin Club. If you don't know Franklin Club, it's a local liberal think tank that focuses on the political and economical education. Thank you, Ilia, so much for coming today. As I already mentioned, there are thousands of people from all around the world, be it digital nomads or who have remote work and are considering to relocate to Georgia. There are people who just want to move to Georgia because of the way it's done as a country. There are business owners who also would love to move their headquarters here. Georgia is very attractive to some people because of its low bureaucratic approach and to many low taxation. It's not an offshore country, but yet where all this happened because some people are not aware of it. So is Georgia really low bureaucratic and really low tax country? How this happened from the history perspective?
Hello, first of all, thanks for your invitation. Yes, I agree. Georgia is a very business friendly and low bureaucratic country, and it's even started about more than 15 years ago when the new laws was initiated and the totally new laws were adopted in order to attract foreign investments in Georgia and international business investors. And this change of law finally was good that now Georgia is in the rank of top 10 countries in the world in easy doing of business in the country. And there are few countries you can find in the world where you can incorporate your company and start business in just one business day. And also the banking system, also the other government institutions and government services are very affordable, and mainly today it's electronic based, which make it more easy and low bureaucratic and more attractive for foreign investors. And that's why Georgia maintains its in the top rank of easiest countries of doing business in the world.
Thank you. Yeah, you're totally right. I think it's even ranked number 3 in the world for opening the business. Just to start a business is just very easy here. So that's totally relative.
Not 3, but 8 and 10 between this range.
Yeah, there's making the business and then starting the business.
Yes.
So I think that making the business may be a bit lower, but it's still very good. Thank you so much. And since you are from your position of being tax advisor, you also founded a whole company for it. So would you maybe share this related to your perspective, to your history? Would you share how you got to this?
Thank you. And now today, I represent a tax consulting company, and previously I used to work at the Revenue Service of Georgia more than 11 years in different positions, and I got very valuable and huge experience, I think. And now I use this experience to help investors to start and do their business in Georgia in confidence, because it's easy to do business in Georgia, but our legislation is not so easy and it's a little bit complex, and maybe it's easy to start business, but before starting you need to get qualified consultation, and because our law is not so easy, and it's developing time by time and becoming more and more clear, but the time changes and it's more challenges, so new challenges, and even the crypto, which is a new challenge, and there is no experience, for example, in the too much experience in, for example, in the tax examination, but we have already some laws regarding cryptos, which makes our country also very crypto friendly comparing to other countries. And also our government announced that this year this law regarding cryptos will be more clarified and will be more detailed, and these questions which now we have today not clear in our legislation will be so clear this year. So we are looking forward to this law from the government. And I think more investors think about doing business in Georgia who are working in crypto business.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning this. It's a very complex answer. I totally agree that this is, despite still Georgia is low bureaucratic, I would say that honestly, after living in European country, the legislation is simple, okay? But yet at the same time, as a business owner, you don't want to read legislation. You want to have someone who understands it. And that's incredible that you worked in Revenue Service, which is local financial institution, the governmental institution, for 11 years. That's an incredible experience. Maybe just if I could get back to it, you were working across different departments, so you were part of how it was changing and simplifying, because as we covered, or as you already mentioned briefly, when someone is submitting taxes or everything, almost all the operations with the government are online here for already a couple of years. This is very unusual on the global aspect.
Yes, I also wanted to mention this, that main services and which is related to taxes and not just submitting tax returns, all the services related to incorporation or taxes or tax services, getting tax certificates, tax notice, everything. So about 90% is electronic today in Georgia. And this even started more than 10 years ago. And the first steps was taken from about 10, 11 years ago when our government decided to move everything online. And it was very successful. So that personally, I visited from my previous work from the tax agency in business trips across Europe, and to present our achievement to some major European countries, and to my representatives mainly from post-Soviet Union countries, but there was also major European countries. And it was just amazing for them that in such a small period of time, how our country managed to do everything so that even the cash register report, which is immediately is transferred to the government electronically, and it's not anymore like previously we used to, when I was working as an auditor, so we used to request from this whole list of these cash receipts. And you have to check each transaction. So it was like a disaster.
Well, the thing that is normal in Europe.
Yes, and it started even 11 years ago. We had this electronic system.
Wow.
And this whole data was electronic. And today it's more and more developing, and even you can request any certificate, any notice, even the residency certificate you can request from the electronic portal. So each taxpayer once incorporates a business and gets a unique business registration number, opens the same day this electronic tax portal and uses all these services.
Yeah, I would mention here that it's even in English. That's a real thing, because again, when you are living somewhere else, especially when you move to another country and you don't speak local language, you don't have a chance. So this, of course, it's still complex, but at least you have a little bit the chance to at least have a clue what's going on, actually, because it's in your language. It's also in Georgian, but you can just switch to the English version.
It's also in English, but it's not, how to say, sophisticated. And,
it's okay. It's okay.
But
trust
in
me.
future, so it's developing and will be understandable for English version, also will be available.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask, just staying at the topic, for people who would love to move in and benefit for, let's say, for example, from the 0% or 1% taxation for the freelancers when they want to start a business. Is there something you would recommend them? Because still, it was I remember when I was moving in and I was just searching for the information for days, despite it's more or less simple, but there are some, let's say, selected businesses to which you can do it, you cannot have 1% taxation on consulting and so on. What people should be aware of? What would you recommend them?
Yes, from my experience, and also from about 2 years ago, once I started to run my tax consulting company, and also during my experience, in tax agency. Yes, Georgia has very good tax reliefs and tax benefits, but these benefits and these laws were initiated for the concrete purpose, not for just to make some tax shelter and some offshore system. No, even this small business entrepreneurs tax certificate, which is 1% tax rate, uses this has a special law, so it's regulated, and many investors who are thinking about to get this certificate should know that there is a regulation and which is also changing and developing time by time, and maybe one day it can be some issue this way, and tomorrow it can be changed, because our legislation is changing, but changing in a positive way, which means that it responds to the challenges. So if there is some questions which are not understandable for taxpayers, for investors, our government tries immediately, as soon as possible, to publish the new law, to change it. Even we have legislation, we have the instructions, manuals, which is published from the tax agency. If they face, without any kind of, instructions, just simple manuals, which you can read, and it's based on simple examples. And regarding this 1% tax rate, first of all, what I recommend to people who are thinking about to get this tax rate and tax certificate in Georgia, that to get a qualified consultation before getting this certificate, because it's a 1%, because we know that the tax rate is 20%, it's huge different. Yeah. But there is it's not applicable for all activities, and there is defined in the legislation for what kind of activities it's applicable or not.
Yeah.
And even not so easy. So there are some activities which you can provide with this 1% tax rate activity, but there are also other activities which, if you provide, you cannot get this tax certificate for other service. And that's why it's very hard to understand this foreign investors to understand, but if they get the qualified tax consultation, after this they will be more confident and can decide what will be better for them.
Yeah.
Also, one thing and one important thing regarding this 1% tax rate is that this is applicable for Georgian tax residents.
Yes.
Yes, it's no problem. You can get the tax certificate and pay taxes, but you are not obliged to pay unless you are a tax resident of Georgia. And we have a separate regulation for how to become the tax resident of Georgia, and there are two ways. And that's also...
Yeah, that's a very complex...
Yes, very complex. Thing. And so I just can talk about it all day. I want to outline the main problematic issues. So the one problematic issue that is, because of this 1% tax rate, many businesses, many companies started to move their employees from the contract, from the labor contract to the service contract. In order to, because in case of paying salaries, you have to pay 20% tax rate. But if you register your employee as a small business entrepreneur and gets a 1% tax rate, which is, it's very simple, just you can even get it online, as I also already mentioned, and you can get it in one business day. But because of this risk from the government that not to lose the tax from this salaries, and to prevent these companies from moving these employees from a labor contract to service contract, they initiated and published the regulations that limits this small business entrepreneur, this 1% tax rate usage. For example, if the small business entrepreneur has only one client and serves only to one client, and also it depends on the contract, what's written in the contract and the conditions of the contract, there is a big risk that this 1% tax rate not to be considered by the government and tax agents, and can be changed to ordinary 20%. And it's not written in law that what I say that in case of one client, you cannot use it. It's not written. Yeah. But there is some instructions from the government which you have to read. And that's also the main issue, what the foreign investors need to consider when getting this 1% tax rate.
Yeah. I think thank you so much for explaining this. This is very important to point out. I think there's even like an online test you can take. I think it's about 10 or 20 questions in English. And you can, based on that, consider whether in case of audit, you could have a problem and so on. So I find it
was developed for these reasons. And there is in tax portals questionnaire, you fill this, but it doesn't have any kind of legal power. It's just,
Sure.
In legislation and tax code of Georgia, it is written that tax agency has a power anytime if it sees that there is some kind of avoidance of tax or that change the qualification of any operation with its sole discretion. And this kind of power our government tax agency has according to our legislation.
Yeah.
And you don't know in advance what they will think when auditing your tax return.
It's still government. You can.
Yes, that's why it's very important to get a qualified tax consultation and tax accountant.
Yeah, tailored to the person's problem. Okay. We will cut it. It's okay. It's okay. We will cut this. It's okay.
Sorry. No? It's...
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should turn it off. Sorry.
I'm really sorry.
No worries. Thank you. It's okay.
Okay, I will power.
I will remember that. Okay, thank you.
Audition. მაგათი შული მქონდა ხმადა რატო? ახაც გავთიშე.
It's okay.
Everything okay?
Yeah.
I think I speak too much, no?
No, perfect. Thank you so much. It's very good. Let's continue.
Huh?
Okay, let's continue. Thank you so much. I'd love to move maybe to the topic of like for business owners, because what also Georgia has now or for the past years, it's this Estonian model of the taxation for companies, which is literally like that you tax at a point when you are withdrawing money from the company. Is it right? So that as long as you keep investing the money in the company, you do not pay an extra like tax on it. So yeah, if you would maybe broaden this to some people who might be interested for about it.
Okay. Georgia is a very business-friendly country also regarding this Estonian model, which was initiated and came into force from 2017, which promotes the reinvestment of companies, and which means that in case of the previous law, for example, the companies pay taxes based on the profit. So during the year or the income, expenses, and what was the net income, they paid taxes. But from 2017, the tax code was changed and the new Estonian model was established, which means that this previous net profit tax payment was removed and is not using anymore. But the companies pay taxes only when they distribute dividend. So if you start business, you don't, but it's only to profit tax. So it relates only to profit tax, corporate profit tax, other taxes. You can start business and to say it easily, unless you can make reinvestments, you can develop your business and until you take dividend and to take money from the company to your pocket, you don't pay profit tax. It's 15% in Georgia. Even if you just not reinvest, but if you just leave it in the company account, you don't pay profit tax, which is very good for development, businesses oriented to development, and very, very attractive for, and many started, and this law was previously used for medicine service.
Okay.
Yes. Now it's available, but there are some exceptions, of course. It's applicable for all companies.
Okay.
And, for example, for financial companies, for banks, or microfinance organizations, and so they are mainly, so for major businesses it's applicable, and I think it's very good tax condition for companies.
Okay.
Promote their investments.
Thank you. Just related to this, also Georgia has certain like special taxation statuses for companies, like virtual zone status and some other
international companies.
Oh yeah. Would you maybe mention some of these, or what should be people aware of? Because I know that like people should really make sure that they meet the conditions. Otherwise, they could face again like some problems with the revoking the status and so on.
Yes, we already mentioned this small business entrepreneur. There we didn't mention also we have micro business, and we have also virtual zone tax certificate and international company tax certificate. And these last two tax certificates are related to IT companies mainly, also the shipping companies and shipping business, but mainly it's for IT products and services. And because Georgia is suffering this development, this IT tree, and because it's very hard even today to get qualified IT staff, Georgia started to attract the foreign IT companies, foreign IT specialists in Georgia, and to develop this IT industry here in Georgia. And that's why established some very good tax reliefs. For example, let's start from the virtual zone, which is for comparing to international companies. It's a little bit small company and mainly for IT companies which are not using too many staff, and mainly for IT specialists who are working without too much help of the other staff. And in this case, the profit tax is 0%, but the main criteria is that this IT service or product shall be supplied to non-resident of Georgia, outside Georgia. This IT service must be provided outside to non-Georgian resident companies or individuals. That's the main criteria, and it's applicable for only this IT revenue from foreign source, not Georgian source. And these companies enjoy this 15% tax relief, profit tax. There are also some small advantages, but I will not mention it here. And for bigger companies which use the staff, and main expenses are these salaries, we have international company tax certificate, which has more tax benefits, and it's mainly, really for international companies. Now this tax certificate attracted many international IT companies, and even many international IT companies now started to move in Georgia and started their business here. And because it has tax reliefs on salary payments.
All right, wow.
Yes, so as there is ordinary 20% tax rate in case of salary tax, and in case of this international status, it can lowers to 5%.
Okay,
Yes.
that's very good.
Also the profit tax, which lowers also to 5%, and also there is advantages of property tax. So it's very good for the companies. But if you are a big company, of course, the international company is more useful. But for small companies, virtual zone is also very good. But here is also problematic issues which this foreign investors don't know and must consider, and is that these certificates and these laws were initiated for concrete purpose to develop IT industry in Georgia, to attract these IT companies or IT specialists in Georgia. But many foreigners, many people think that, and it was a problem also for the tax agency, and now it's about clarified and initiated new laws, that many IT specialists thought that they can come here, establish this company, get this tax certificate, and even without living here in Georgia, and they can get this tax benefits.
Oh, yeah.
And without any developing any kind of IT here in Georgia, even not being here. So they thought that it was applicable, this tax relief for them. But it was not clear in our legislation. It was not allowed. But once the government started the tax audit of this kind of companies, they faced these problems that about more than 1,000 of these tax certificates were issued and given to the companies, but about 70% of these companies even didn't exist and did not have any office in Georgia.
Oh yeah, I see.
And it was a very popular topic in TVs as well, because the government started to examine all these companies and to charge high penalties and tax charges, and many this kind of investors left these companies in Georgia. But this tax relief, these tax certificates works if you come in Georgia and you work from Georgia and develop the IT here. It's not necessary, of course, to always and not to cross a border and to be here.
I understand.
In case of in virtual zone, even it's not necessary to take some Georgian employees and staff. And if you are a IT specialist and you are providing this IT service yourself, it's no problem. Just the main requirement is that this IT service to be provided from Georgian territory. But for international company, some requirements are much more higher. You have to have some office here and staff here.
Yeah.
And many foreigners think investors that it's just as simple, but it's not as simple. So if you yes, that's why also the IT information technology in Georgia has its definition, and many people think that their activity is IT, but according to legislation, it cannot be IT.
Yeah,
some kind of more marketing. So people who are in marketing service, online marketing, they have such questions, so that if it's applicable or not. But it's truly the IT. If even you can provide with IT, you can provide also other activities, marketing or whatever, but this tax benefit is applicable for you only for this IT income or IT activity. Not
Understood. Yeah. Thank you so much for the clarification. It's my last question. I would love to ask, because you already mentioned it a little. Do you think that Georgian government is changing the legislation related to taxation often? And if so, in what direction? When you move in your company to be based in Georgia, you don't want the government to change the rules along the way every year, let's say, to make it more difficult. So if you would maybe please, for your perspective.
Thank you for your question. Yes, so I say that yes, it's our legislation changing very often, but in a positive way. There is no often it changes often, but in a positive way and not a big change. If it's a significant change, first, it has some time adaptation period, and this government always tries to publish this, to announce this draft, at least the draft of this law to the business, and go through the detail of this before it will be adopted with the business. It may take 1 year, 2 years, if it's a significant change. And once it's adopted and the details are gone through with the business, they adopt this law. But the change which happens very often is that it's a clarification, I say, which means that if the government sees that there is some problem which not understandable for taxpayers, which creates some misunderstanding between the government and the investors, they always try to be very quick and to make, not because this change of law needs some time to be adopted by the ministry and parliament and so on. And that's why they have very good instruments. They publish, which doesn't need this kind of bureaucratic steps. They publish the instructions, kind of manual, and they publish it on the official website. And it's very clear and based on the examples. For example, very recently, we forget to mention one very good or so tax certificate. It's free industrial zone certificate. It's also for companies, export-oriented companies. We have in Georgia several free zones, and to attract also the investors and export-oriented investors, our government created these free zones where the companies can come and enterprise some products and make the export of these products. And in this case, they have almost zero tax rate, almost zero on salaries, but in this case, the salaries tax is payable by the employees. And recently, there was new instructions from about 2 weeks ago from the revenue service, and there is a detailed instruction based on the examples, the concrete examples that company A started this activity in the free zone, hired these employees and doing this activity, and how it will be taxed. It's very detailed examples, yes.
That's good.
Yes, of course, it clears all these questions and all this misunderstanding. And these kind of instructions and manuals are very often published from our government because it doesn't need any kind of these bureaucratic steps to adopt.
I see.
And also we have a special trading company status, which is for companies who are oriented to export or re-export of the products, and they can import goods in Georgia and re-export it to other countries with low taxes. So I think Georgia is a small country with big this kind of projects, which I think in future will take effect, and Georgia will be one of the successful country in the world. And because maybe it's not known in the world, it's because of the size of our country. But we have very good tax conditions, tax reliefs, and I think we have to work more of popularization of this, our legislation, these tax conditions to foreign investors to know about it.
I hope that this video will be part of sharing the awareness of the topic. So thank you so much, Ilia, for coming today. Just if someone needed some of your services because you're focused on the topic and you're professional on it, so where can people find you?
So we have mainly this tax consultation service. We provide accounting service, we provide audit and legal services. And anyone can find us just in Google Tax Consulting Georgia. So we are company IND Tax Consulting, and we already helped even many businesses to attract in Georgia and to start their business in Georgia. Even one of the biggest and international companies here started their business here based on our recommendation and our work, and I think it will continue. And more and more companies and international investors will be interested. Also, we are working on new projects for international investors, which means that we mentioned this legislation changes, and because these changes are mainly only in Georgian language. I don't mean the tax code, which we have also English version and major tax, not only tax code but other laws of Georgia. But the changes which happens, it's not available in English, and we are working to translate this in other languages, even in English, and to provide this updated information to our foreign investors to have the correct information, what's happening and what's not to miss any important things. And we just started this, and I think this will help to our clients and our investors.
Thank you so much. All right, I will definitely mention the link to your website. You can find it in the description below. Please, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, you have also the section for it below. And I'll be looking forward to see you in the next episode. Thank you. Take care.